Well, hello and welcome to the A-List Education webinar series for students, parents, and educators. Each week we discuss what it takes for today's students to be college ready in this year of academic disruption and uncertainty. We encourage you to ask questions during the webinar. You can submit your questions through the chat. You can also submit them through the Q&A bubble at the bottom of your screen. Let us know who you are, where you're from. Are you a parent, a student, an educator, or other? Our panelists will address your questions either while they're speaking or go ahead and address it at the end of their talk. So if you want, you can go ahead and say hi to us and type in a little hello into your chat or into the Q&A, and we can see that it's working. Thank you. All of our webinar topics, I think, can be summed up in one question, and that's what is the new normal when applying to college? Today, specifically, in this time when campuses are closed or have limited accessibility, we're going to talk about how to build your college list virtually. Most of those attending today are familiar with CampusReel, which recently made the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. The site is a grand tour of U.S. colleges as seen through the vlogs of students who attend those colleges, giving insider advice and their candid commentary. It has been called the tour behind the tour, and of course now extremely popular with rising juniors and rising seniors. So I'd like to welcome CampusReel co-founder Nick Freud.
Thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Great. And A-List Education's Director of College Advising, Natasha Sherbinin. Hey, Natasha.
Hi, all. So excited to have you here tonight. Looking forward to this conversation with Nick.
Great. Go ahead, Natasha. All for you.
Excellent. Great. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is our agenda for tonight, or maybe it's morning where you are. I know we have some international guests tuning in as well. Today, we're going to start off by talking about the college criteria. So what are the different things you should be considering when initially building your college list? We're then going to talk about how you begin searching for colleges and how you can research a college. And both the search and research that we're sharing tonight are going to be all things that you can do just from your couch at home, no matter where you are in this world right now. These resources should be available to you wherever you are. We'll then talk about how to organize your research. So once you have a list of schools, how can you keep track of all the different schools on your list? We'll talk about what goes into balancing the list, making sure that you have a well-balanced college list. And at the end, we'll make sure to save some time for Q&A. So to start off, these are the different college criteria that you should consider when looking at building your list. So we have three different categories. We have basics, academic experience, and extracurricular experience. So within the basics category, depending on what grade you're in, or maybe you're an educator or parent, this is going to look a little bit different for everyone. But you have to start thinking about one of the most basic things is where in the country do you want to go to school? Do you want to be able to drive to school within an hour or maybe 3 hours? Are you comfortable getting on a plane? Do you want to get as far away from your parents as possible? I thought I was going to go to college in Hawaii when I was in a freshman year in high school. That changed, but at the time that seemed like a great idea. Location, so again, there's so many different colleges in the US, so thinking about narrowing it down because there's so many schools to different geographical locations, whether that's Northeast or maybe you want to go to the West Coast. Size of school, we like to categorize schools into small, medium, and large. And this is really important to think about because maybe you're a student who does really well in small classroom settings where you get to know your teachers and have that personal relationship, or perhaps you actually prefer to be in a lecture-based classroom where you're just sitting there and taking notes and you don't have to participate or have a discussion. And so looking at smaller schools, that's usually about 2,000 students or less. If you're looking at medium school, we like to say about 2,000 to 8,000 students, and 8,000 and above is everything, is large. That's considered large. Of course, in the US, we do have schools that go up to 35,000, 40,000 students. So you know yourself best, and throughout high school, it's important to take time to really think about what kind of setting would be most successful for you. Housing considerations, so thinking about, do you want to live on campus? Some colleges allow students to live on campus all 4 years and guarantee housing. Some campuses don't guarantee housing, even for freshmen, so taking that into account. Oh, we have housing on there twice, so I guess it's doubly important. So looking at the academic experience, there's a lot of different curriculum to look at and differences in the curriculum when you're looking at universities versus liberal arts colleges. So a liberal arts college, they're typically smaller and you're gonna have a bunch of general education classes to take. I won't get into that in too much depth tonight because that could be a presentation on its own. But the major difference between liberal arts and research universities is that liberal arts is going to allow you to survey a bunch of different classes, different types of classes. And those research universities, you might be a little bit more specialized within what you're studying, which leads you to the academic major, making sure, of course, that your college has the major that you want to study, or perhaps you're looking for flexibility in that major and you want to be able to create your own major, which is a bit, an option at many schools. The different academic requirements, so what classes will you have to take no matter what kind of major you decide to declare. Again, going back to average class size, and I'm just going to speed over to the extracurricular experience category. For students, it's really important in the US. Our higher education system is very special, I think, in the sense that when you're looking at a school in the US, it's important not just to think about the academic experience, but also the social experience, the cultural experience that you'll have on campus. And so for extracurricular experiences, you really want to think about the student organizations that are on campus, the general vibe, and I know that Nick's going to talk a lot about that later on in this presentation and how you can figure that out from home. That's on campus, and making sure that you really feel like you're part of that campus community. So my two favorite resources online for starting to identify schools. If you're in a position right now where you haven't even started creating your college list yet and you don't know where to begin, because if you look at this, it says, you know, you have 3,714 college options in the US. That is a lot of options and can be quite overwhelming. So one of my favorite resources for starting the college search is the Big Future tool on College Board's website. So if you just Google College Board Big Future, you'll be able to find this one. And what's really nice is it has all these filters for you. So you can start to put in selectivity, type of school, so that's going to be public or private, 4-year or 2-year, location, majors, etc. And it will actually start to whittle down a list for you and might spit out 50 schools at first, and then if you get more specific, it will spit out 30 schools. So it's a nice way to learn about some schools that maybe you've never heard of before. My other favorite tool here is the College Express lists. And so College Express really has a list for anything you could think of. I just took a screenshot of some of these here, but you can see here, this one is like vegan college report cards, schools receiving an A. So if you're a vegan and you want to go to school somewhere that's going to have a lot of great options for you in the dining hall, that list is for you. Schools with Army ROTC, if that's something that you're interested in. So these are all, these are, again, just a sample of the number of lists that are available, but I definitely urge you to check that out. All right, so we're going to dive in to researching a college. I'm going to provide a few resources that I use with students. And then, of course, we're going to let Nick show off CampusReel, which is definitely our favorite resource when we're researching a college. So a good place to start, which might seem obvious, but it's worth noting, is on the school's website. And there's a few reasons for that. First is, I think one of the silver linings of COVID-19 is that schools have really stepped up their game in terms of the number of virtual resources that they've created on their websites. So as you can see here, this is just a screenshot of Dartmouth's website. They have everything kind of in one place. So you can do a virtual information session, you can do campus tours, you can check out their 3D magazine, and then you can meet their bloggers. So there's lots of different ways you can interact with the school. And one thing I want to note here is that even though you're at home right now and you can't tour these colleges, it's still really important to interact with colleges. A lot of colleges will measure demonstrated interest. And demonstrated interest in a nutshell is showing interest in a school expressing to that college that you intend to go there if you're admitted. And some colleges will track this, some colleges won't. And you can do a simple Google research or Google search to see if your school does or does not track demonstrated interest. But one way to demonstrate interest is to go on a campus tour. And unfortunately, we can't do that right now. So you have to kind of double down on how you're interacting with these schools. And a great way to do that is by interacting with their online resources. So if a school does track demonstrated interest, they're actually going to track if you've opened their email and clicked on, maybe it's a blog post. They'll track if you are going to their website. They'll then look to see, where are you going on their website? Are you checking out their athletics page? Are you looking at the English major page? And then, another thing they look at is, are you attending these information sessions? If you're registering for a webinar that they're hosting, those are all great ways that you can demonstrate interest. And it's especially important right now to do that, given that we can't interact with admissions counselors in person like we typically can. Here are a few of other sources that we like to use to kind of explore campuses online that aren't CampusReel. Again, we'll get to CampusReel after this, but these are a few that are a little bit different than what CampusReel offers. So Big Future is a great one for kind of just the facts. We're going to tell you how many students are on that campus, what their average GPA and ACT and SAT scores are. They're going to tell you the location. So kind of just like the basic facts of a school. College Express, I already mentioned, but it's great for the lists. UVisit will give you more of a traditional college campus tour. This is probably the most similar to the college tour that you would get in person if you visited a campus. But it's online, so it's not exactly the same, but the colleges have tried to do the best they can to kind of give you that same experience. Unigo is another one of my favorites. I always tell my students this is kind of like the Yelp of colleges, in the sense that it's review. So if you're review obsessed and you always read all the reviews on Amazon before ever ordering something like I do, then Unigo is a good one. It will give you all of the dirt on schools, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that's a fantastic resource, knowing that you obviously have to take everything with a grain of salt. And then finally, YouTube, good old YouTube. If you just type in the name of a college, you can find tons of videos on YouTube, whether it's just a student taking you around campus, or maybe it's a video of a concert recently, or a dance recital, or an improv group, any kind of student organization on campus, a cappella concerts. It's a really great way to start kind of getting an idea of what that campus community is like. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Nick, and I'm going to stop sharing to allow him to share so he can tell us a little bit about CampusReel.
Awesome. Cool. Is my screen being shared at the moment?
Not yet.
Okay, give me one. Oh, there we go.
Beautiful.
How about now?
Yeah, it's loading up.
Cool. Awesome. So Natasha, thank you so much for setting that up, for giving all that information. That was incredibly helpful. Thank you everyone who's attending today. Super excited to be talking to you. I know this is a really strange time. Everybody is coping, but I'm feeling really optimistic about what's happening in the space. Like we were saying, if you all have any questions at any point, feel free to just type it into the chat. As much as I like hearing myself talk, I'd love it if this could be more of a conversation than me presenting to you all. But I just want to quickly take a little time out of this talk to explain a little bit about CampusReel, but more importantly, what we noticed in the space that motivated us to create CampusReel. And then I guess we should turn the conversation a little bit over to what's going on during this lockdown, and how college search is going to look in a post-pandemic ecosystem. So again, feel free to just cut me off at any point with questions. I'll try to get to them. So just a little bit about CampusReel and what motivated us to create the platform. We began looking into this space a little over 3 years ago. And what we quickly realized is that there's no shortage of resources that can give students all of the quantitative information that they want to learn about a college. So it's really easy, for example, to figure out what SAT range you need to be in to get into a certain school. If you're curious what the student to faculty ratio is, what size the school is, you have that all at the tip of your fingers. That's very easy to access. But what we noticed was that when it comes to qualitative factors of the school, when it comes to community, student body, vibe, culture, there were few, if any, resources that were really effectively speaking to those realities of college. And our theory was that once you get to college, you realize that it's so much more than just an education or anything that can be represented in numbers. What really defines college is the experience side. That's why it's called the college experience. So our question was, is there any way where we can make it so that any student anywhere in the world, no matter what their resource level is, no matter if they're able to travel the country, can get a detailed and honest understanding of a college campus all from their living room without necessarily having to travel in person? We felt that what the space was really lacking was student voices at the forefront of college search. So our mission was to enable student storytellers throughout the country with all the tools to create effective video content, taking prospective students through every facet of the college search selection and matriculation process. With this video content on CampusReel, I imagine many of you are familiar with the platform. Today we have 15,000 videos on the platform from about 320 college campuses. All of the videos have been honest portrayals from either real students, real faculty, or real alumni. There's no scripts. We don't have an agenda as a company. There's nothing that we tell our students to say. We give them some guidelines and ask them to just be as honest and transparent as possible. So I know when we asked you all what types of members of the community you were, I know we have a lot of students here. I know we have a lot of parents here. I know we have some international students as well as college counselors. I think where I can be the most useful if I do have a voice in this space is to really just kind of identify what factors you should be looking in outside of just the numbers. And that's really what CampusReel is all about. I remember when we were building the platform, we spent a lot of time meeting with high school students, with parents, with college counselors, with current college students to learn about the pain points within the space where they were struggling throughout the process. And it was a really big learning opportunity for us because we noticed really quickly that when speaking with high school students, asking them what they prioritize in the process, their answers didn't really make any sense to us as people who had already gone to college. I remember very vividly in one of our first focus groups, we were speaking with a student who seemed adamant that he wanted to go to a medium-sized school. We're like, oh, it's awesome. This early on, you already know that you want to go to a medium-sized school. Out of curiosity, why is it that you want to go to a medium-sized school? And he said, well, you know, I like having a lot of friends, but sometimes I don't want too many friends. So I feel like, you know, I want to have a lot of people around me, but also not too many people around me. So a medium-sized school seems right. We're like, huh, that doesn't really make any sense. We don't think that that's really what school size actually means when it comes down to your experience. And the reason I bring up that story is actually because I noticed a lot of you are juniors in this process, and it's one angle to CampusReel that we want to emphasize is that we want many of those statistics and data points that Natasha was speaking to, location, school size, student to faculty ratio. It can be hard for students to have a real appreciation for what that actually means. You look at a number, you look at school size, you look at location, but do you understand maybe what it's like to go to an East Coast school as opposed to a West Coast school? Do you know what the difference in feeling when walking around campus if you're at a small liberal arts school versus a big state school? Do you have a deep appreciation for how game day affects your college experience? Do you know what it's like to be in a huge lecture hall as opposed to a small classroom? These are things that without visuals can be really hard to get a grasp on just from numbers. And that's another one of the motivations for CampusReel. So I think what I'd like to do is maybe quickly bring you through the platform and just speak a little bit to our approach with CampusReel and some of the pain points that we thought we were solving. Again, cut me off at any point if you all have any questions, and hopefully we can address some more of them during the Q&A section. And Natasha, I'm actually unable to see if there are questions coming in, so if you could just let me know if they do.
Absolutely.
Cool. So if any of you all are familiar with CampusReel, you understand that we've structured everything in terms of quote unquote official campus tours. So every school has a profile, and generally how students will use the platform is they'll be interested in a certain campus or institution. They'll go directly to that profile. They'll search Boston University, for example, and go watch the 150 videos that we have. I'm going to bring you through how that process works, but first I want to speak to one point in that CampusReel is incredibly searchable. Most of the videos taken on CampusReel are in a school-specific context, so the student is relating everything back to their specific institution. That being said, we do have at this point, thousands of videos that we are non-school specific or school agnostic that generally just speak to the college search, selection, matriculation, and experience process as a whole. We have a ton of videos to help students navigate the SAT, ACT process. We have videos talking about where to find textbooks. We have videos about being a broke college student and how to cook your own meals. At one point, Natasha mentioned vegan. There was a search for vegan on College Express. I'm actually not positive that we have vegan content, although I think we do. So you can search vegan, and yeah, how I eat vegan in college, vegan meals in college, what I eat in a day vegan. So again, like we know it's really important for students, obviously, to have a really deep understanding of the colleges of interest. But prior to doing school-specific research, we always encourage students to try to get a bird's eye view of what the whole college experience is about. Like what does it actually feel like to be on a college campus? What are the things that students are prioritizing? And then digging a little bit deeper into, okay, big school versus small school, sports culture versus non-sports culture, maybe specific engineering programs versus a more liberal arts college. Just getting in your head, starting to wrap your head around the experiential realities of what these data points might mean for you is really, really important to be able to get that first list of 40 and then kind of narrow it down to those target reaches dream schools. So I'm just quickly going to bring you through what a college profile looks like on CampusReel. My co-founder and I went to Colgate University in upstate New York, so we always try to shout out our alma mater. And again, I don't want this to take too long. I do want to get to the question and answer. But so essentially what our approach was with these college pages is we wanted to take, when we were applying to college, there were these big textbooks that we used, and it would have 5-page essays kind of breaking down exactly what was going on throughout the college process. They were super useful for us. That was the main mechanism that we used to learn about colleges. That being said, they were so boring, it was almost impossible for us to get through them. My parents would buy these books and throw them at me and my brothers, try to like glue our heads to the pages, and we just could not get through it. So our thought was, okay, what if we take one of those big textbooks like the Fifth Guide, use video as the main mechanism to communicate information, but preserve all the data and information that makes that resource so valuable. And that's kind of what our college profiles look like. So as you can see immediately, it's all video based, it's all student generated. These videos, again, are authentic, unscripted. We have no agenda in this process. A couple key features I want to call your attention to. One limitation that we noticed even with in-person campus visits that we thought was really important to address is that as a student or parent, you're not able to choose who your tour guide is. So for example, you could be a student who's really only interested, let's say in the theater program on a campus, and you're taking a tour with a chemistry major. That student is going to be able to give you really high level information on the campus. A lot of it is going to be marketing material coming from the university, but what they won't be able to do is speak to your specific experience and explain what your college experience is actually going to look like based on your interests. So to kind of push back against that and combat the limitations that we saw, we set up what we call perspectives. My screen is cutting it off a little bit, so hopefully you can all see, but on every college profile, for the most part on CampusReel, we have multiple guides. The idea is to have guides from different backgrounds, different parts of the country, different majors, different interests, so that you, the high school student or parent, can take a tour with that student who you kind of feel like is your future self a year from now. So just on Colgate, we have Sophie, Emily, Will. Will's a political science major from Georgia. We have Emily from Texas, Sophie, who's also a political science major. And these profiles are constantly getting built out. So we're getting new perspectives on the platform all the time. I think I'm just going to quickly pop up in a video. You won't be able to hear it, but just so you can see the structure that we're going for. As much, we don't want to undermine how research has been done prior to CampusReel, and we think it's incredibly important to be looking at all of these numbers, looking at the rankings and factor them into your decision. Our main message that we want to get out there is there's so much about the college experience that just cannot be captured in numbers, in rankings, in data. For example, what does it look like to hang out in your dorm room at 10:30 p.m. when you guys are studying for finals, let's say? What does the commute to class look like? What is it like biking around campus? While those factors might not seem like they matter during the college search portion, they're really going to affect your experience. So we want to bring a lot of the realities from the college experience back into the college search process. And then the last thing I'll mention, and then I'll stop talking, to you all is that one thing that we noticed when we were doing these focus groups and speaking with high school students that we really rubbed us in a certain way is that we asked students how they felt about the college search process, and unanimously it was stressful. I hate it. This is like the worst thing I've ever gone through. I don't know what to do. I feel so confused. I'm so tired. I feel like I'm being judged constantly. We had graduated from college at that point, and it was strange to us because college is the most fun, educational, informative, transformative experience that a young adult gets to have. But when trying to figure out which school you want to go to, people are completely paralyzed and stress riddled, and there's a ton of fear associated with it. One of our real goals outside of just providing a new resource into the space was to try to bring some of that positive energy that you have when you're on a college campus, back into the college search part of it. It feels strange to us that something that is so objectively positive as the college experience is met with so much fear and anxiety when you're trying to decide which school you want to go to. Ultimately, for the most part, students absolutely love what campuses they're on. There are so many great colleges that are out there. You're going to get a great education almost anywhere that you go. What's really important is finding where you fit in, where you feel like the students represent your interests, and somewhere that you can grow for the next 4 years. It's not just a place where you're going to learn, it's a place that you are going to call home for the next 4 years. And we, again, the main objective with CampusReel is just reprioritizing what students focus on in college search, not pushing out any of the data, numbers, and rankings, but also adding on top of that a lot of these qualitative, vibe, community, student-based assets that we think are just so important to the experience. So with that, I think I'll stop my presentation side of things. Happy to answer any questions that might come up about this.
Nick, we got a lot of questions for you because this is great.
Cool.
So first question is, how do you select the students who submit their tours and what do you look for?
Yeah, great question. So I think the first thing, actually, I'll start just to explain quickly about how we get all the content on CampusReel. It's a constantly evolving system. CampusReel is never done. It's always changing. We're always figuring out new ways to get great content on. Initially, when we first built the platform, we were solving a two-sided marketplace. So we had to go out and find students ourselves to bring onto the platform. Every student was vetted. We had them fill out a questionnaire. We had them submit pieces of video that they had already recorded to make sure they were proficient. We made sure that they were good ambassadors for their campus before they were able to post to the platform. Another thing I think that's important to highlight is that CampusReel is a crowdsourced video platform, but it's not a free-for-all. It's not a Snapchat for colleges. It's not Instagram. It's a resource. Every video that has been published to the platform has been vetted by a member of the CampusReel team. So we take a lot of precautions to make sure that all the content that's going on is effective. But then to answer your question a little more targetedly, what we realized over the course of this process that we didn't really have an appreciation for is that this generation of current high school and college students, Gen Z, is so unbelievably proficient in digital storytelling, specifically when it comes to video. Not only are they incredibly capable of making this type of video, but it's the preferred way to both create content and consume content. So a lot of what we're doing, we don't have to convince students to create this type of content. We don't even really have to instruct them all that much on how to create it. They're far better than we are at creating this content. What we felt was important is that we just needed to give these students the tools to create effective content. We need to set up a platform where they could have eyeballs on the other side, and the platform would kind of build itself. So to answer the questions, we make sure that students from a background standpoint are good ambassadors for their college campus. We make sure that they're proficient digital storytellers, although to be fair, any student who's going to spend 20 to 30 hours recording videos about their campus, one, they're great at recording video, but they also just love their college campus and want to get the message out there. And then on the backside, before any videos go up, we make sure that they're useful, they're productive, and they're not kind of against anything that we want published about a college campus. So it's all very monitored from the beginning to the very end of the process.
Awesome. Great. All right. Another one for you is, do you see one or two things that students think are most important on their tours, like food or dorms, for example?
Yeah. So I think number one, like when we were doing these focus groups, what just comes up over and over again, and I actually remember from my own college experience, it's why I went to Colgate, is students go on these tours, they listen to the hour and a half kind of presentation from their tour guide, the information is somewhat interesting, but then students will go walk around campus after. And in that time when you're walking around campus, it's not something you can define. It's hard to put a finger on, but students will stop and say, this is the place where I feel at home. There's a vibe, there's something. I remember when I was at Colgate, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I remember seeing kids walking around the quad and driving up, and they all just looked so happy. And there was some like kind of overwhelming feeling of belonging that you just can't get unless you step on a college campus. And that really is, that vibe idea is what we're trying to bring to the forefront through these videos. In terms of specifics of the college experience, like obviously food is very important. Obviously campus is very important, but I think all of these different factors that you can break down coalesce into a vibe that you just kind of pick up on when you walk around.
I couldn't agree with you more, definitely. Great. How about, we have some questions coming in about how you select the colleges, assuming that you're constantly updating colleges that are on there, and how you kind of go about that process of updating and choosing the colleges that are represented.
Yeah, so I can actually just give a little bit more of a complete answer to the original question that was kind of speaking to that front. So when we were first building out the platform, kind of solving the two-sided marketplace, we were essentially just trying to make college students throughout the country aware of the opportunity. So it was very much a thing where we're posting on job boards and social networks saying, hey, like, if you want to represent your campus, if you're a good digital storyteller, this is a new opportunity to get involved. Because that was the mechanism that we used, we weren't recruiting students actively. We were just trying to get the word out and see what came in. The audience ended up being relatively self-selecting. So the students who are contributing to CampusReel, it's all video, like I said, video rock stars and kids who just absolutely love their college campuses. To be honest, at the beginning, there wasn't a ton of rhyme or reason to which colleges we added to the platform. We knew that to some extent, we needed to have the kind of top 100 prestigious colleges represented, but at no point did we want this to be a platform that was reserved for colleges that are ranked 1 through 100. We frankly don't think these rankings are very important, actually, but that's kind of for another conversation. So it's not like it was something where we're making sure we get the top, 1 to 50, then we get 50 to 100. The same time, at the very beginning, the same time we were getting Harvard on the platform, we were getting a school that you probably haven't heard of in Texas. So we really don't want this to be kind of like elitist in any way. Now that we've solved the two-sided marketplace, we've kind of leaned off of that ambassador system and are beginning to work with institutions themselves who are tapping into their student bodies to create this type of video content. They're reaching out to film students on campus, to tour guides, to just good students that they like to create this type of video content. But one thing that we think is important that everyone knows is, although we may be working officially with some of these colleges, the type of content that you'll see on CampusReel is indistinguishable from the videos that we would get prior to working with. We make sure when we work with schools that we preserve the CampusReel style of content, we preserve the integrity, and that this never turns into a platform where colleges are using it to, again, kind of reinforce marketing materials. While we think those are incredibly useful, there's nothing wrong with them. What we're trying to do is supplement it with honest, authentic video content.
Awesome, great. And we have a few questions about when you're searching for schools. I'll kind of group 2 questions into one for you. So the first question is, do you have a filter option? So can you filter on your platform for things like size, average GPA, average SAT? And the second part to that question, I think is the second part, I'll group it together, is do you update if schools are test optional? Since some of these schools have been going test optional. Are those things that are included on your website, or are you guys mostly focused on providing that tour experience because that's not included on other websites?
So great question. You can filter by location, by school type, by school size, by competitiveness, which plays into the SAT range, and by a couple other factors. That, again, is not anything to say about our approach to college search. It's more that we want to make this platform as searchable as possible. And we know that students sometimes qualify by those terms. To answer the test optional question, that's actually a great idea that we hadn't thought of. But I think to that point, so no, the answer is no, we have not yet identified if schools are test optional. Whoever put that in, great idea though, we might take that from you. But I think one point to kind of underscore that made me think of is that with CampusReel, in no way are we trying to step on top of other resources that have been in the space. And again, we're while we have a different approach to the college search process, it's not to say that we don't think that data, ranking, statistics are useful in certain parts of the process. So we're not trying to push any of that out. Everything that you see on CampusReel is just a gap that we saw in the system. So it's very specific to something that we felt like was not addressed that we wanted to introduce. So it's a long way of saying, you know, we're not trying to be everything to everyone. We understand there's tons of ways to provide value throughout this process. And we really encourage people to use all of these other resources out there. Like, we're not trying to have it so that everything you do is on CampusReel. What we are trying to have it do is that the second that you want to learn what the student community is about, that's where CampusReel comes into play.
Awesome. Thanks. This is great. A similar question to before, but I do want to ask it because it's asking more about specifically, are you planning on adding international schools? And there's a question about adding smaller, not well-known colleges, but it sounds like that is something that you're continuing to do as well.
Yeah, I mean, so our goal for CampusReel is to power video content for every single institution, basically in the world. And we don't even feel like it needs to be limited by undergrad. You know, we want community colleges to be on the platform. We want graduate schools to be on the platform. We want a specific side of the platform just for law programs, as well as international schools. You know, one of our big goals for the next calendar year is to get CampusReel to be much more global, both in terms of the students who are using the platform and tailoring packages specifically to international markets. So having, you know, students who are native Chinese students who have studied in America create content both in English and then also in their native languages to introduce back into the space. But at the same time, we want to be powering this video content for the institutions abroad also. So our goals are lofty, they're far-reaching, but again, like, we see this to be completely limitless. We want this content to be absolutely everywhere, and we want to get creative with it. We want different use cases. We want study abroad to be involved. We want this type of video content to help serve students throughout their internships and job searches. We just think this type of unscripted, authentic video content is so powerful, and we want to introduce it into every single corner of the process.
Amazing. I have a question about tour guides. So are you able to, one, choose a tour guide? Like, can you filter by the academic major? So not even searching for a specific college and then looking at the tour guides available, but could you like request a specific tour guide by major?
So it would be difficult to request a specific, so tour guides don't have their own profiles on CampusReel.
Okay.
So the students themselves are not discoverable. That being said, if you were interested, I imagine the use case would be that a student is just interested maybe in learning about like engineering, hearing from engineering students, and the school that the student goes to is not as important. That's what we've tried to build into the platform. So all you would have to do is search, you know, engineering, engineer, and you'd be able to find any of the videos. But no, it's not. We're not trying to have kind of like student profiles where you can go out and find a student and then see what school they go to after the fact.
Great. And then are any of your tour guides non-traditional students? So maybe a student who is not, you know, an 18-year-old, it might be older.
Yeah, we have, I'd say the most non-traditional that we have is sort of commuter students and part-time students. And a lot of that content we thought was important to speak to jobs on campus, financing college, what to do when education is only part of your life. We don't have, I wouldn't say we're comprehensive in terms of non-traditional students, but again, like, this is all what we're trying to build towards. CampusReel is very young. This is by no means done. It's constantly evolving, and we just want every piece of value that we can provide. We want to use this video content to do so.
Awesome. Is CampusReel mainly a way to give perspective into campus life, like a vlog style, or does it also provide insight on the admission process as well?
Yeah, great question. So yes, we have videos just specifically for the admission process. If you search just admission, SAT, ACT, you'll see there's probably about 1,000 videos that speak to it. Some of them are like really well done. I was super impressed when I saw it. So yes, we're trying to address all facets of the college experience, and we're also trying to address things that may not necessarily relate to college experience, but do have to college search, but do very much have to do with the college experience. We have a whole series on mental health in college. Again, as you saw when I searched, we have a whole series on how to eat vegan in college. So it's a lot of things that, you know, we do have all the structural information. So we talk about the search process, we talk about prep, But we talk about a lot of things that you may not even consider to be important. And that's always what I try to highlight in these kinds of conversations.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Okay. How about, I thought this was an interesting one. I saw a question earlier. There's been so many questions. I'm trying to get through as many as I can. I saw an earlier one about how do you kind of figure out if you do like a if you would like a smaller class, or if you would like a lecture. And then kind of a follow up to that is, are there actually videos showing what a large lecture class would look like?
Yeah. So we have tons and tons of videos showing what lecture halls look like, what small classrooms look like. For many of you juniors, you may not even totally know like what a teaching assistant is, what a TA is. That's something I didn't know when I was in college. We have a lot speaking to that. Me personally, I went to a small liberal arts school, and I remember I did not have an appreciation for what class size really meant. And again, this is kind of going back to my earlier point where like I read these numbers and these stats, and in words all the time, I was reading information about how to think about class size, how to think about student to faculty ratio, but I could not conceptualize any of this without visuals or an experience to go along with. So we thought it was really important that our students kind of underscore the differences in class sizes and what the experience is like. So my suggestion for any student, and especially for you juniors who are maybe earlier on in the process, who have not yet visited too many college campuses, if any, is don't worry at all about what schools you're interested in, about if this school is going to be on your list or not, if you can even travel to go get to it. I think the first thing that's so important to do that hasn't really been possible in the process is to get a bird's eye view of what the college experience is all about. And again, like what these things that you may have read in numbers and data points, what they actually look like and what they actually mean. So you know that there's a difference in class size, you know that there's a difference in student to faculty ratio, but it's really hard to understand how that will actually affect your experience. So like if you go to the University of Oregon, for example, I have a video in mind where one of the students takes us through a large lecture hall that has maybe 450 seats. She explains exactly what it's like to sit in a lecture hall, how often or not students go to class, what the presentation style is like. She then explains that all those classes are supplemented by teaching assistants, something I didn't even really have an appreciation for when I was in college. And then she takes us outside and she talks about the pros and cons that she sees of going to a large institution where there are such big lecture halls. At the same time, you can pop over to Colgate University and see Sophie inside of a small little classroom. There's actual views of classes where she's in a discussion setting. They're sitting in a circle. It's very like the teacher is sitting on the floor. And even just seeing those two videos, you get a real understanding of what it would be to sit inside of a small class, what it would be to sit inside of a big class, and what that would feel like on both sides. And hopefully immediately you'll have a sense of, oh, okay, big lecture halls, that seems right for me, or small classes, I want the discussion, that looks like it was something I would want to be a part of.
That's an incredible resource. I think that's one of the hardest things, is to figure out what that experience is truly like. And there's definitely not many resources online, at least, that will allow you to figure that out without actually attending the lecture yourself. So that's so great.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to move on, and then we'll have some time, hopefully at the end, for more lingering questions, but I do want to get to the rest of the presentation. So we're briefly going to talk about how to start to organize your research. So, and I did see a few questions come in as we were chatting, with questions about students who have maybe 30 schools on their list right now and how they start to whittle it down. So if you're in a place where you're starting your research and you might have 20 to 30 schools on your list, I really recommend creating a spreadsheet. I usually use Google Spreadsheet with my students. We have a really great college list tool that we'll use that I'll show you in a minute. But at the very least, have every column lined up and have location, number of undergraduates, all these factors, and the colleges on the left-hand side, all these categories across the top, and then fill in all that information. So you have just kind of one place where your entire college list lives. These are the categories we like. Of course, you can customize this to your own liking. Maybe if you're thinking about playing sports, you can add in something about sports there, or if you want to add in a category about student organizations that appeal to you, by all means, customize this to how it'll best serve you. But these are some of the categories that we like to start with. And then once you've kind of organized all the research that you have, you want to start to whittle it down to 10 schools. And the question of how do you do this is a tough one. You know, in this day and age of virtual resources, there's so much out there, and sometimes it can almost seem overwhelming. Like, where do you look? I mean, we love CampusReel, like I said, but you know, there's plenty of things that supplement CampusReel as well to get the full picture. If you can get on college campuses once things start to open up, I think that's a really great way to see things as well. But that's why I think CampusReel has been so great, because we're not sure when tours will start to open up again for students to get on campus. Once you start to look at those schools and really dig deep, take advantage of the resources that are available to you, whether it's talking to a student who currently attends the school. Admissions counselors are very available right now. Everyone's at home, you know, sitting on their computers. So definitely just reach out via email, give the admissions office a call, ask any types of questions that you have. Once you start to whittle it down, you're hopefully getting to about 10 schools. 8 to 12 is usually what we recommend, and 10 is kind of that sweet spot, because it allows you to have that one unlikely or wild card school that we know is probably a long shot, but you know, we always encourage our students to reach for the stars, and so you have one on there that's the unlikely or the dream school. Then you have the 3 reaches and the 3 targets and 3 likely. So I'll just talk briefly about how you categorize each school. So if you successfully categorize your schools into 3 reaches, 3 targets, and 3 likelies, that's what we call a balanced list. And then you can throw in that wild card on top, just for fun. So with the 3 reaches, you're looking at schools that typically have an acceptance rate of lower than 25%. Those schools are likely going to be reaches for most students because they accept so few students every year. And this could change, you know, maybe a school that has a 20% acceptance rate isn't a reach for a specific student. But that's, you know, really when you have to do your research and try to work with a professional or counselor, someone at your school, IEC, to figure out, you know, is this going to be a reach for me? And another reference point is looking at where your SAT or ACT score and GPA fall within their academic profile of accepted students. So if you're in the bottom 25% of students, so, you know, you're looking at maybe you have a 3.0 GPA and a 3.0 to 3.2 is in that bottom 25% of students who gets accepted every year, then that school will be a reach for you. Moving down to the next category for targets, you might hear target or match schools. These schools usually have an acceptance rate of over 25%. And then again, your academic profile, meaning your GPA and your test scores, are right in that middle 50% of accepted students. And then you want 3 likelies. These are schools that, you know, you're really in that top 25%, and we're almost positive, 99% sure that you would get admitted based on your academic credentials. Now, it's really, really, really important that every school on your list is a school that you are incredibly excited about and that you would attend, right? I think I have students every year who throw on some likely schools just because they have to, but once it comes down to it, like, would they actually want to attend those schools? Probably not. And so you want to make sure that you're choosing likelies, and there's plenty of schools out there, as we've shown. There's so many options. You want to make sure that every school on that list is a school that you would be totally pumped to attend the following year once you get your acceptance letters. This is the college list tool that we love to use at A-List. What's really nice about this tool is that it actually gives your college list a grade. Some of my students love that, some of my students hate it. But what's kind of nice is that it'll give you recommendation based on your list. So we're seeing here on the bottom that it's looking at this is comparing to, you know, their SAT scores and their GPA. Bottom 25%, are you falling in the mid 50, or are you falling in the top 25%? And that's just based on their own personal performance. And then, selectivity is up here on the left side. So you can see if a school is less than 25%, all of those schools that are less than 25% are going to be reaches. Although, you know, working with a student as a college counselor, I know that Boston College, for example, actually isn't a reach for the student. It's going to be target for other reasons. They're an athlete, they have connections, whatever it might be. We can move that into target. Here we have kind of their target, the rest of their target schools. And then you can see if anything fell into this category, that would be the likelies. based on the list and where the schools are following in each of these categories, it's going to spit out a grade. And once the student is able to find 2 more likelies to add to their list, this will give them an A, assuming that they're able to keep their list between 8 to 12 schools. Because again, that's our recommendation, is that students are applying to more than 12 schools. Just a quick information about A-List. So at A-List Education, for those who aren't familiar, we offer both tutoring and college advising. So we have test prep for SAT and ACT, but also for subject tests, academic support. We now do distance learning support. If you're stuck at home and trying to figure out how to ace your chemistry final, we can help with that. And then we're also offering boot camps this summer. So we have an SAT and ACT boot camp this summer. You can look for more information from us via email. In terms of college advising, we cover the entire process. So we start with helping students create their college list using the resources that are available online, and then also using just the years of experience that we've had as college advisors and college admissions professionals. Then we work with students on everything from extracurricular activities to their college essays, to advising them on the Common App, major and career exploration. It really runs the gamut. One thing I did want to note is that we do have college application workshops and college essay workshops this summer in July and August. If you're interested in learning more about college advising, my link down here, feel free to take a screenshot. We'll also send it out in the follow-up email, but if you want to schedule a free 30-minute consultation with me, I love talking about college admissions. I can talk about this stuff all day, every day. So feel free to sign up for a phone call with me there. All right. I'm going to pass it over to our moderator, Anthony, who is going to feed us some of your great questions from the Q&A.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Nick. It's great to see we see all these rites of passage for high school students and college students on pause, but it's great to see that CampusReel can still kind of deliver that experience of visiting the campus to high school students. It's the truth. You get on that campus as a high school kid, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. Suddenly you're in like student paradise. So it's great to see that again. So I'll give you some questions from our Q&A. We had some questions come in. This is a good question for Natasha. How can I find the right college which goes with my future major? Like, what's the best way to hone in on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do love the Big Future filter tool. They do have an academic major within there that you can filter for academic major. You can also just do, a quick Google search and see what type of programs pop up. Depending on the major, your school counselor, or if you're working with an independent counselor, might have recommendations. There's certainly programs that have different offerings depending on where you go, depending on the program. So, arts programs can vary drastically between different campuses. Business programs, even in the offerings at business, if they have accounting, if they have just management, the offerings within that business program could vary drastically. So my advice is to start by just doing some Googling and then really dig deep on that school's website. One thing that I love doing with my students is going to the academic page of the college's website and looking at the curriculum. So actually digging out that course catalog and seeing what classes are available for me within this major, and then also seeing what the requirements are. Some students know exactly what they want to study and they just want to take courses within that major. Usually that's not really possible at most schools. Usually you have to take some general education requirements, but depending on the school, it might be possible to really concentrate on one thing or really take classes in a bunch of different things if you want to have more elective classes. So check out the course catalogs for all your schools and also the major requirements on your college campus, on the college websites.
So Natasha, it's another question for you, and I've heard you talk about this before. What do you think will be the impact, and maybe Nick, this is something you can join in on. What do you think will be the impact of current seniors potentially taking gap years on current juniors? You think this will impact admissions in 2021, 2022?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's kind of two scenarios that I've been thinking through, and we'll definitely have more clarity on the situation in the fall once we see if colleges have been able to fill all their seats. Right now, colleges are pulling from their wait lists. A lot of colleges are pretty desperate for students for this incoming class with just all the uncertainty of if classes are going to be held online or if colleges will be resuming on-campus programming. So, there's two scenarios. One, they could fill successfully their entire class off that wait list. And it actually might be even more competitive for juniors next year if they're students who are deferring this year to next year, they're filling up those seats. So there's going to be less seats available for rising seniors who are applying to college for the fall of 2021. The flip side of that is, and I've been trying to be more optimistic about this because I don't think it has to be more competitive. I think that some schools are still going to be very desperate. International students, unfortunately, might not be able to make it to college campuses this fall. And most schools, that's usually about 10% of their student body. At some schools, it's even 20% or 25, 30%. So without having international students, there might be more seats available. I think it's too soon to make a call on this. I think we're gonna have to see how successfully colleges really fill those seats this fall. And then we'll have much more information about what the landscape will look like for rising seniors who are applying to college for fall 2021.
I have a question here for Nick. Nick, can high school students request a video? So if a student wants to see a video from an English major at a small liberal arts college or a specific college, let's say like Gettysburg College, can they request that through CampusReel?
So we don't have systems set up where students can request content directly and it'll show up on the website the next week. I think that would just be too tough for us to be able to do. That being said, we have done the best to try to guide our content creators to create every piece of video content possible and to address like all the different questions that students might have throughout the process. We spent a really long time figuring out what information should be included in these video tours. That being said, we're not currently in college, we're not currently high school students. So if people do have ideas for videos or information that they think is just missing on the site, I'm going to post my email here. You guys can reach out directly. If it's a good idea, we're certainly going to go ahead and get that type of content on the platform. So the answer is no, we don't really have a system set up in place, but we're so open to any ideas that the community has.
That's great. I have a Natasha question for you. We have an attendee says they're curious about the difference between early decision and early action. Maybe you can clarify what those two things mean. And they're also, I'll combine another question about test optional. And I want to remind viewers, I chatted in the chat box, we sent a link to our webinar from last week. Everything you need to know about making a test optional decision. So take a look on our blog. The link is in the chat box. And you can hear Natasha and Dory Schultz from A-List talk about what test optional means to students and to parents. But this question would be about early decision and early action.
Sure. So early decision and early action are similar in the sense that they're both early admissions policies that allow you to apply early. Usually November 1st or November 15th are the most common deadline dates for early action and early decision. The difference between the two is that early decision is binding, meaning if you apply early decision to a school, you are committing to attending that school if you are accepted. So they'll let you know usually by mid-December if you're accepted or not. And if you are accepted, you have to withdraw all your other applications and you're basically saying, I am coming to your institution. Early action is not binding. And so you can apply early action and hear back mid-December, sometimes earlier, and not be committed. You can still hold your regular decision applications. And in fact, you can actually even apply early decision school as well as early action.
Okay, Natasha, we're at 6 o'clock, so I'm going to give you a couple of like rapid fire questions at the very end, okay?
Perfect, so ready for it.
Kind of quick answers. One attendee asked, when you say reach out to regional admissions officer, should you just reach out and say hello to develop a rapport, or should you reach out with a specific question?
I love that question. Always do some research, ask with a specific question. You don't want to waste their time. I say they are around, but they are busy, important people. So make sure you are showing that you've done some research already on the school. So you're asking an intelligent question. It shouldn't just be how many students attend your school. It shouldn't be anything you can find on the website yourself. It needs to be a question that you really do need to ask a human in order to get the response.
And when should you start your college list, ideally?
Yeah, so I think sophomore year is a good idea, is a good time to start thinking about the colleges that you might want to attend in general, not necessarily specific schools, but trying to think through, like, do I want a small school, a medium school, location? Those generally the college criteria I highlighted at the beginning of the presentation. You should start thinking about those things sometime, maybe sophomore year, spring of sophomore year. And then your junior fall is really the best time to start digging deep on that college list and really doing the research in earnest.
Okay, final question, and I think the Common App maybe answers this question. When it comes to college application process, can you use one essay for all other colleges you apply to?
Usually, yeah. I wish I could give a quick answer to this. I will try my best. The Common App is one application where you can, do one 650-word essay and send it to a lot of schools that are on the Common App. However, not every school is on the Common App. The vast majority are, thank goodness, but we do have schools like the University of California schools, UT Austin, that are Georgetown, for example, that are not on the Common App. And so you might have other essays to write for non-Common App schools. And then there's the supplemental essays. And again, I won't get into too much now, but the supplemental essays are those individual essays that you might have to write about, or you might have to write for your individual schools that are on your list.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock and we're going to wrap it up. And I want to thank you, Nick and Natasha, for the webinar today. Thank you everyone who attended. Thank you for your questions. Reach out to us at A-List if you have any further questions. Nick gave his email address. Reach out to Nick. Of course,
yeah, I'm going to post that in here.
Colleges, right? And we will have a webinar next week. So we hope you can join us for an introduction to the college essay. This is Thursday, May 28th at 5 o'clock. And we hope to see you there. Follow us, and everybody please stay safe and have a wonderful and happy Memorial Day weekend. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Take care.